Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend the Momo Fanfics, back with the amazing fanfiction. This is Series A, What If Blind Deku Became a Hero? 10 years ago, in the park, two small figures reached a chain-linked fence separating the wooded park from the rest of the forest. Listen up, Deku, a boy with spiky blonde hair, red eyes, and a satchel, said with his hands at his hips. If you want to officially join the Bakugo Hero Squad, you have to be able to survive the rest of the afternoon in the forest. If you can't keep up with me, then you can't join my squad. Got that? Right. The other boy with unruly green hair, green eyes, and a large yellow backpack gave a determined smile. I'll do my best, Kachan. Well, let's hope your best is good enough. The blonde boy, Katsuki Bakugo, slipped through a gap in the fence line. Forward march. The green-haired boy, Izuku Midoriya, scurried through the gap as well and hurried after his friend. The rest of their evening carried on with them going deeper into the forest. They mostly kept to a straight path to easily find their way back. Bakugo had no trouble throughout the walk since he could blast through obstacles with his quirk. Izuku wasn't as lucky. He was tripping over his own feet to the point that he was covered in a thin layer of dust and dirt. While Bakugo used his quirk to easily hop over logs and over large puddles, Izuku had to squirm over and around them and jog to keep up. Soon he started to notice a few pipelines crossing through the areas that they were going through. Kachan, have you been through this part of the forest before? Izuku said as they passed by another pipe. Of course, I have. My cousins used to hang out here. But they're too big now, so I'm the only one that comes out here. I actually thought of making it the base for my squad. Well, do you know what's in these pipes? Looking at one of the brightly colored labels on the pipe. Can't you read, Deku? No, he said with a slightly mopey face. Well, Bakugo said with a smug look of superiority. It's obvious a water pipe. Oh, okay. They continued onward until they came across a network of pipes in various sizes that towered over them. All right, Deku, you're kept up so far, but this is the real test. You have to climb to the top of these pipes and climb back down in 5 minutes. He said as he pulled a stopwatch from his bag. But it's really high, Kachan. Izuku said as he looked at the pipe with fear. You want to be part of the hero squad, don't you? Yeah, he said looking at the pipes again before shaking his head and looking more determined. Then let's get started. Ready, set, go. Bakugo started the watch and Izuku started climbing the pipes. He started climbing on the smaller pipes to use as footholds. He was halfway up the pipes by the 1.5 minute mark, and was doing pretty well for someone quirkless. But, Kachan, I don't think that I should be up here. There's water on the pipes and it smells a little funny. It's fine, keep going. When Izuku was taking another step up, he didn't see that it was slick from the pipes. He slipped and there was a beat of silence before he started to scream in fear. Deku, Bakugo instantly going off of reflexes, started using his quirk to fly up to catch Izuku. However, he wasn't paying attention to where he was blasting and couldn't avoid blasting at one of the pipes. There was an instant blast of light and a loud bang. Hours later, at the hospital, Izuku and Bakugo laid in separate hospital beds after just being rolled into the room from the emergency room. Along with them were their parents, Mitsuki Bakugo, mother, Masaru Bakugo, father, and Inko Midoriya, mother. The nurse couldn't give them the details, so the two mothers had resorted to comforting one another while Mr. Bakugo paced the floor until the doctor came. Doctor, are our sons going to be okay? Mr. Bakugo said with desperation as he gripped the doctor's shoulders. Please calm down, sir. I can assure you, all of you, the doctor said, glancing at the concerned mothers. The boys will be fine. But there are a few things that I would like to go over. The parents all sat in front of the doctor to hear his report. Based on the reports from the medics and police, the boys were seemed to have been playing on pipes to a water treatment plant about a mile from where they were found. The explosive discharge from Katsuki's quirk triggered an explosion from a minuscule leak in a couple of the sewage pipes. Due to Katsuki's body being used to explosions, he wasn't affected by the explosions besides minor burns and bruises. The Bakugos sighed in relieved. However, I can't say the exact same for Izuku. Inko leaned forward, practically being the embodiment of concern. How bad is it? Let's say the results were surprising. I looked through his past records and found that he was quirkless. Someone without a quirk and being so close to the blast would have received severe burns all over his body, but look at him. He gestures to the still unconscious boys. He only has minor burns. I consulted some of the other doctors and we hypothesized that he might have developed a quirk. What? Inko was frozen in place. How? The doctor continued explaining while glancing at his papers. We'll have to consult with a few quirk specialists before we can confirm it, but there are only a few possibilities that could explain what happened. Even if someone or something was blocking him, he would have been more injured than when the medics found him. We can't do that much until he wakes up. But we took a couple of brain scans, found the sight region of the brain decreased, while the hearing region increased. Ma'am. The doctor glanced up from his papers to find Inko tearing up as she tightly clenched her chest. The Bakugos were supporting her by her shoulders. Inko, they questioned as they looked on with concern. It might actually happen. Inko glanced at her son lying peacefully on the hospital bed. My little Izuku might really have a quirk. It's possible. Inko couldn't help cry tears of joy. Izuku POV. A bright flash and a black void. That was the last thing I ever saw. I could feel myself open my eyes, but I couldn't see anything. Why couldn't I see anything? Where's my mom? Mom, mom, mommy, mommy, Izuku, mom, Izuku, everything is going to be okay. Mom, I can't see anything. Izuku, look. Inko paused, thinking over her words. Put your hands on my face. What? Here. Inko gently took my hands and put them on her face. I couldn't believe that sensation that I experienced. I was expecting to just feel her nose and stuff, but I sensed more than that. I could sense her whole body. The way she was sitting, her heat beat, I could barely make out the chair that she was sitting on. Izuku. I looked up, only to not see anything. What do you feel? I can feel you. But more. I heard my mom giggle as she hugged me and called the nurses to bring in the doctor. 8 years later, at the tender age of 4, I learned that not all men were created equal. At the age of 6, I learned that fate has its gives and its takes. When the doctor came in, he explained everything to my mom while I was knocked out for a couple of days. However, he did go over basics with me then and then gave me the details over the years. I got my wish, I got a quirk, sonic radar. *1 The electrical charges in the hearing and touch region of my brain amplifies until can hear and feel almost everything round me. But even with this cool quirk there was a drawback. I'm blind. The universe works in mysterious ways, but sometime I think it has a side of humor with me. The doctors told me that the light and chemical exposure to my eyes damaged them enough to where I can barely recognize light and darkness. I've been told that my eyes look the same as it did before I was blind, but the color faded to mint green instead of the darker green that I used to see in the mirror. But most people don't see them, because they keep them closed to make sure nothing went into my eyes and then into my system. However, thanks to my newfound quirk, I wasn't as bad after a while. I was equipped with devices to help me get used to my quirk and relieve any strain that it might cause. I used to have a blind cane with a sensing tip that helped with my touch range, but I grew out of them. To help my hearing abilities, I was equipped with a hearing device around my neck that was a collar of sorts with headphones that amplified the hearing range. As time passed and I better control of my quirk to the point that I only needed a lighter version of my hearing device, which was designed by my quirk specialist, Professor Cathode *2. The device includes an open collar and earpieces that she modeled after Bluetooth designs within a sight assistance application. When I used those prototypes I had to be under close surveillance for research. With everything going on, my mom and Professor Cathode decided that it would be best if I was homeschooled for the rest of my elementary years. I had a quality education thanks to Professor Cathode's connection, but it didn't exactly build up my social skills. Once I was able to control my quirk and use it to get around, I was allowed to go back to school. All the motion and sounds that I sensed were overwhelming at first, but I grew to manage it. As far as my peers' reaction to me, the sympathy that I once had for not having a quirk shifted to sympathy for being blind. But I couldn't complain too much since I didn't get picked on besides the occasional whispering or blind joke. But that was 10 years in the making. Just last week I took the entrance exam for UA High and got the results when I checked this morning. I aced it. I felt like I was on some sort of happiness high or something. I could sense that I was getting weird looks from some people, but I was in too good of a mood to care. I could have went on like that forever. That is, until the teacher blurted out my success just as Kachan was bragging about acing it himself. There was dead silence to anyone less, but I could hear them whispering the same old things. Man, does he have high hopes? Maybe too high. Poor guy. Just wait until the physical part of the exam. That will bring him back down to earth. The hard way, too. Classic Deku. Poor Deku. It didn't matter. I didn't need their pity. Even without my sonic radar, I could tell that Kachab was fuming and grinding his teeth from the situation. And I got to experience it firsthand, when he came to me after class. And just where do you think you're going, Deku? Kachan shoved me back in my seat and waited until everyone filed out the room until it was just the two of us. If anyone in this god-forsaken dump is going to UA, it's going to be me. He stepped closer to me until he towered over me and all I could sense was his angry scowl. We both know that you have no formal training, no combat experience, and no physical ability that could help you in the next stage of the exam," he said as he prodded my chest with every "no." "So, why don't you piss off and let the guys who actually have chance to get it take care of everything?" He prodding finger popped a little. "Got it, Deku?" I didn't respond verbally but opened my eyes and gave a short nod. "Good," he said as he fist bumped my shoulder with a sarcastic air before leaving the room. He may have not have known it, but as I opened my eyes, I also activated my sight application. I'm usually only to use it in extreme situations because it could cause damage in the long run, but I just wanted to see him in that moment. One thing that I was surprised to find was that with the usual angry scowl, his eyes seemed a little glassy. Izuku POV. Damn, when will I ever learn? I said as I put some eye drops in my eyes and wince as it stings. As helpful as my sight applications was, it's still somewhat new to me and hurts the back of my head from overworking the occipital lobe of my brain. *1. Maybe Kachan is right. I may have a quirk, but that doesn't make me a hero, I thought as I walked to the metro station. No, just because my quirk doesn't blast things like Kachan doesn't mean that still can't help with other hero stuff. I've studied from My Hero audio notes, snapshots of heroes, and quirk analysis for years. I just have to keep fine-tuning my quirk and see how I can use it to be a hero. Who knows, I could create a whole new type of hero. Until then I'll keep on smiling like All Might would do. I held my head high and laughed my insecurities away. I was thinking so hard that I wasn't paying attention and didn't sense it until it was too late. Just as I was going underneath a tunnel, I felt something strange in the sewer beneath me. Just as I turned around, I was faced with some sort of sludge monster thing that burst from the sewer's manhole. I tried to back away, but the sludge grabbed and dragged me toward it. "You're a nice ordinary looking skin suit. What better way to blend into crowds with?" Even as I clawed the ground, it pulled me back with ease. "But worry, kid, I'll be all over in a few seconds." The sludge forced itself into my mouth and nose as it surrounded my body. I tried claw it away from me, but my hands just kept going through it. I tried hitting it and it suddenly felt solid, but I barely loosened its grip if any. *2. I thought this was going to be the end. I was never going to be a hero. Never going to prove myself. Never going to make a difference. Never going to be able to save people. I was going to be nothing but a worthless muppet for some villain. *3. I'd rather die in a ditch than go through this hell. Just as I stopped struggling, I heard a familiar laughter that I always heard on the news and from video clips. I cracked one on my eyes open and turned on my sight application for a second and saw the unmistakable silhouette of All Might before I started to lose consciousness. I woke up to someone lightly hitting my cheek. As I started to regain my senses, I could feel a large figure looming over me. It was All Might. "Glad to see you're all right, young man. Sorry that you got involved in the villain I was chasing. You can say he slipped right by me." He then threw his head back and gave his iconic hearty laugh. I was awestruck. The All Might was standing in front of me. A picture. I scrambled to grab my tape recorder camera. "Don't worry, young man. I noticed that you were a fan of mine and left a couple of mementos for you. My autograph on one of your binders, a selfie with you on that camera, and a voice recording that could work as a voicemail or ringtone." Wow. Thank you very much, All Might, I said as I repeatedly bowed in gratitude. You welcome. Now if you excuse me, I have to get this villain to a police station, he said as he patted a bottle in his pocket that I could only assume contained the villain. Wait, I have a couple of questions for you before leave. I'm sorry, but I must go. Crime waits for no one, he said as squatted to stretch his legs. The hero that I practically worshipped since I was little, is standing right in front of me. The country's, and quite possibly this world's, #1 hero. I couldn't let this opportunity. Before either of us knew it, I grabbed onto him. Thanks for the continued support. He made a humongous leap into the air to the point where it could almost be mistaken as flying. He was almost in the clear, until he noticed me clinging to his leg. What the hell? I admire your dedication, kid, but I really got to go. Wait, we're in the air, aren't we? If I let go now, I'll fall to my death. Oh, you got a point. Even though I couldn't see anything, I couldn't sense things as well as I did if I was on the ground, and that scared the hell out of me. It wasn't long until he landed and I could sense my surroundings again. As I waited for my soul to catch up with the rest of my body, All Might was getting ready for another leap. I'm sure this building will suffice. Simply bang on the door until someone opens up. And if that doesn't work, I'm sure that I saw a fire escape on the side of the building. Farewell and keep safe, lad. Wait, All Might. All Might stopped for a second. All my life I have been pitied for my blindness, despite my sensing quirk making up for it. But I want your opinion. He glanced back at me. Can I be a hero, even if I'm blind? Izuku POV. You see, All Might, I wasn't always like this. I actually used to be quirkless and was told that it was impossible to be a hero. But then I was in an accident that triggered something in me to develop a quirk, and people now tell me that it's not likely. But I've always wanted to save people, and there are some people, like my quirk specialist, that say it's not entirely impossible and that I actually have a chance. I want to get your honest opinion, because if I hear it from you I know for sure that I'll never give up. So, please, All Mig. I was so caught up in my feelings that I wasn't entirely paying attention to my sensing. So imagine my surprise when I didn't hear a response or feel him take off. However, the tall and muscular figure that I originally sensed before was gone, and in its place was a skinny, sort of malnourished, man. Wah! What the hell? Where'd All Might go? Don't worry, young La. I sensed that he choked on something that I could only hope of spit, but was most likely blood from the thickness. All Might is fine. But where did he go? He said he really had to go or something. That makes no sense. I didn't sense him leave. That is, unless it's a part of his quirk, I muttered to myself. Kid. The thin man tried to get my attention. But that doesn't make sense either. Kid. His quirk has always been physical based, so what could have happened? Hey kid. The man's shout broke me from my thoughts. Relax, will you? I'm All Might, okay. But how? You know people will puff themselves up to make themselves seem bigger. It's like that. This thin All Might slid down into a sitting position and sighed. And if we're being real for a second, it partially because of this. He lifted up his shirt and exposed a massive wound that covered the majority of his left side. This is wound that I got from a villain attack 5 years ago. That couldn't have been the saw attack by the venomous chimera, would it? Humph, yes. I guess you know your stuff, he said with an amused shine in his sunken eyes before it disappeared and bowed his head. But anyway, I couldn't retire from the symbol of peace, so I sucked it up and continued smiling. As a result, I can only maintain my muscle form a few hours a day, and it seems to decrease with every major attack that I'm hit with. As I grip onto the power that I still have, I find that maintaining it is essential to remaining as a hero. And so you must understand when I say, he said as he looked up toward me, you can't be a hero unless you have enough power that it requires. And I'm afraid that's something that you may not overcome in your state. I was too spaced out and didn't really pay attention after that. I could hear All Might still talking to me, just felt like with noise before he left me there. All Might, the hero that I looked up to the most, didn't believe that I could do it. Even after I explained my situation to him. It wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. It was no use standing here though. I started walking home, while I continued to think. I pulled out my notes and flipped them. I invested some time. So much energy. Learning. Analyzing. Theorizing. Training. It was all for nothing. What was I going to do now? I didn't realize that I was walking to where a villain attack was until I hear sirens and broadened my sensing range and felt the attack taking place a block away. Since I have nothing else to do, I went to go and check it out. However, as I went closer, the scene felt familiar. It wasn't until I got closer and sensed the details that I fully grasped what was going on. The slime villain from earlier was there and had someone with a fiery quirk it's clutched. The heroes were able to create some distance between the villain and the other civilians, but they couldn't get the captive free. It most likely my fault. All Might had captured the villain and no one else could have distracted him, but me between then and now where the villain could have gotten free. It's my fault. I caused more harm than good. But it only got worse. As I got close enough to get a full scan of the captive, I sensed the unmistakable spiky hair, slightly muffled but loud swearing, and explosions coming out of the palms of his hands. Kachan. And I was off before I knew it. I broke through the crowd and ran head-on into the fray of flames. My mind went into overdrive as I ran toward the villain. I immediately remembered something I recently wrote in my notes. Ways to countering number 2: avert or obscure your opponent's vision before going for the attack. Slipped the bag off my shoulder and tossed my bag at the villain with the contents hitting the villain the eyes. Then I also remembered. Surrounding tips number 7: if you can lift it with one hand then it's a possible tool. I grabbed one of my binders and tried to use it as a makeshift shovel to scoop globs of slime away from Kachan. When freed one of his arms, he pried his mouth free. What the hell, Deku? What are you even doing here? He said as he tried blasting the slime away from his other arm. It looks like you needed some help. His already frustrated face seemed to contort it further. But the moment was short-lived as the villain swiped the last of the my stuff out of his eyes. He recovered Kachan in no time and started covering me as well. You again. I'm getting real sick of you, kid. I may not need you as a bodysuit anymore, but I think I'll still get rid of you now so that you can stop getting in my way. I was overcome with the all too familiar sensation of being covered with slime. Before the slime could get to my mouth like before, it was blasted away as I was moved to the side. It happened so quick that I didn't sense that All Might was the one to move me away. I truly am pathetic. How can I scold you about not having enough power, when I couldn't summon enough willpower to use my remaining time? He then turned away from me to face his opponent and Kachan. Fear not, young lad, he started to dash toward the slime villain, for I am here. He threw his fist back and yelled mightily, Detroit Smash. The slime villain was not only blasted away from Kachan. The sheer force of the wind from the punch splattered the villain all over the street and storefronts. And then puts a cherry on top, when the pressure from the punch created an updrafting spiral funnel in the clouds and thus forming into rain. Everything seemed to tone down after that. The medics looked over civilians, Kachan, and me, while the police and heroes were tending to the media, writing their reports, cleaning the slime from the area, praising Kachan for his abilities, or scolding me for my recklessness. But I didn't pay attention to what they were saying. For those brief seconds in the heat of the moment I was helping someone. And that was all I could ask for before I had to face reality. Izuku POV. I was walking back home when I felt someone following me. It was a couple blocks away. I could clearly feel who it was, but they seemed to be taking the same route as me. I stopped in my tracks and ducked into a side street only to feel it mirror my movement. It wasn't until after a few blocks of dodging the stalker that I noticed that they seemed to get smaller. Hey kid, the figure in the alley spoke. Can you quite dodging me? It took me a second to realize that I've been dodging All Might. My suspicions were confirmed when he stepped into the walkway in his deflated form. I wanted to surprise you in my usual hero form, but all that dodging of yours wore me out, he admitted with a slightly embarrassed smile and a sweat drop. But really I came here to thank you, correct an earlier statement, and possibly give you an offer. If you didn't step up to save your friend back there, I wouldn't have realized that I was going against the very thing that I lectured to you. I would have pitied myself instead of pushing through this weak form and bearing the strain of my quirk to get the job done. So thank you. But wouldn't you also say that it was my fault that the villain was even there? Someone like me would only got in the way of things. I bowed my head in shame. That may be the case. However, it was none other than a timid, blind boy like you that was willing to try and, in doing so, push me to try as well. One thing that all the greatest of heroes seemed to say about their early days was that their bodies moved before they had a chance to think. My head shot up. You too have felt this. I could feel myself start to tremble before I dropped to my knees and nodded. I could feel All Might grin along his skeletal features. Then, you can become a hero. I was so filled with joy, I couldn't help the tears that started to flow. I couldn't help it. Call me selfish, but I activated my sight just for a couple of seconds so that I could capture this moment. I would probably will pay for it later, but it was worth it to see the sunset gleaming behind All Might. And that is why I'm giving you the chance to inherit my quirk. Wow, what? The quirk that I have is not something that I was born with. It was pasted to me like that of a sacred torch. My quirk consists of the power of the holder before me, the holder before them, and so forth up to the original owner of the quirk. This energy is condensed into an immense power known as One for All. All Might looked up at me to see that he had my rapt attention. It's your decision to accept, but I'll understand if you need time to decide. I accept, I said without hesitation. I had a feeling you would say that. All Might said with a grin. There's someone, but there is still that might be a problem, one issue in the long run. We spoke over each other. Sorry, your go first, All Might. You will have some training ahead of you. To obtain my quirk, you'll have to be at a certain physical fitness, and if you were to use it in your current state you'll be blown to bits. I flinched from that last part. But that can wait, All Might said, hoping to calm my nerves. What did you wanted to say earlier? Oh well, I have someone that we would need to talk to first. If we don't check with her first, we might run into an issue later down the road. Third person POV. I'm about to go, Kath. Are you sure about closing up by yourself? The secretary yelled through the hall as he grabbed his keys. Nah, it's fine. I have some files to update anyway, and apparently only I can understand my handwriting. Professor Cathode said, referring to a verbal jab earlier that day. Okay, good night, Kath. Professor Cathode wasn't too concerned when it came to appearances. She had gray eyes and olive-toned skin with a dusting of freckles on her nose and cheeks. Her hair was sapphire blue that went just past his shoulder before curling up, *1. Beyond that she was your average 5 feet 3 inches mesomorphic woman. She made her way to her office with a pile of file folders with sticky notes poking out of them. She just sat down to start when there was a knock at the door. She got up and used her X-ray quirk to check the door to find a familiar unruly-haired figure and another figure that seems familiar. Well, if it isn't my little Izu, she said as she opened the door. What brings you around here? And at such a late hour? And with a strange man? She asked the last question with a raised eyebrow. I'm here to tell you about something and possibly introduce you to someone important. As Izuku stepped in, Professor Cathode saw a familiar scar on the person that followed in. Even so, there was nothing sinister in his appearance, despite having a skeletal figure and having what looks like traces of blood near his mouth. She let them in and directed them into another room. Before going in, Professor Cathode placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder and sent him a questioning look, but he reassured her with grin and determined nod before stepping in and sitting down. So tell me, who is this and what's going on, Izu? What would, say if, that is in theory, of course, that, hypothetically speaking, that I could have developed another quirk. It's not very likely, Izu, at least without it being the result of some kind of extreme reaction. What kind of reaction could cause it? Considering the quirk you currently have was triggered by radiation from an explosion. To try and recreate such an reaction is easy, but can be dangerous to use it on someone. What making you ask about all of this? Professor Cathode said as she glanced at All Might from time to time. Well, I can possibly, Izuku tried to explain before All Might cuts him off. I'll take it from here, lad. All Might said as he turned to the professor. You see, I have a strength-enhancing quirk that can be passed on to someone. When I met Izuku, I found that he has the exact determination and heroic spirit that I'm looking for in a successor. Is that so? I've spent my whole life to the study of quirks. I have never heard of quirks being able to be passed on non-genetically from one person to another. How can I believe you? What scientific, or at least logical, proof do you have? Unfortunately, I only have my word to go on. However, Midoriya told me that you were essential in this endeavor, so I'm determined to make this work. All Might paused as he scratched his chin. What if I give you some leverage? How so? I have a secret that only a select few know of, not counting Midoriya. If you sense that he is in danger and it necessary, you could always use against me. With this in mind, would you consider helping us? Professor Cathode pauses to think it over before nodding. Possibly, but need some more information, she said, grabbing a notepad. The name of my quirk is called One for All. And I am All Might. He shouted the last part while he transformed into his muscle form. Professor Cathode was stunned silence for a minute before she let out a shriek of pure joy. You see, being a scientist in the field of quirks, she inquires a lot about the quirks of heroes. She used 3D graphics from her data on heroes to test Izuku's assistance devices in the past. She and Izuku grew close from their love of analyzing heroes and their quirks. So if you thought that Izuku was a massive hero geek, Professor Cathode was the original hero geek. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! It's All Might. In the flesh. Wait, let me get something for you to autograph. Wait, I think I have an All Might poster somewhere in here. The professor scrambled to look for said. Are you sure that you aren't related to Midoriya? All Might said before he gave his signature hearty laugh. Oh well, this magazine has you on the cover. Can you please sign this? Sure. All Might signed it similarly as he did for Midoriya's binders. Thank you so much. Now tell me what you need help with. I'm sure it's not any trouble. Well, Professor. Oh please, call me Akira, *2 Akira-zan. Well, Zan, if I were to give Midoriya my quirk, then the first person that they would go to for proof would be you. Okay, so we would need you to back us up on this and have undeniable proof to give to anyone that may question Midoriya's sudden quirk development. Wait 1 second. The professor got up to retrieve Izuku's file. But I have nothing in my files for Midoriya can be used with proof for a sudden quirk. She heaved a heavy sigh while shaking her head in realization. I would have to compromise my reports to have something that will make sense. I know we are asking for a lot. All Might said as he started to deflate and take a seat. But we can't do this if your data doesn't match up with our claims. You must understand. No, you don't understand. Professor Cathode sets the files down and gives All Might a hardened look, devoid of the fangirlish gleam it once had. A quirk developed as a reaction to an intense event to the body is not as common as it used to be in the past. The other latest cases dated back to almost 60 years ago, but still helpful in my research. If such a case happened again, people would look at my data on Izuku as a reference. Cathode slowly walks toward All Might, who starts to slump in his seat. What would happen to their experiments? What would happen as they decide to cross-examine my findings? What if someone finds out that I have inaccurate data? What would happen to my credibility? There are many scientists that work in the field of quirk research, but only a small number of them are women. It's not easy working in a male-dominated field. Cathode stops and towers over All Might. I sometimes have to put up with conformative crap from stubborn-ass men, but I put up with it because it's a field that makes me feel like I'm making a difference. How can you ask me to betray not only my principles as a scientist, but also the minority that I help represent? *3. Professor Cathode was beyond conflicted. She cared very much for Izuku over the years and would almost give anything to help Izuku achieve his dream of being a hero, even if it was impossible until now. However, is she willing to go against her own morals for it? She was brought out of her thought when Izuku put a hand on her shoulder and giving her the look. Those damn emerald green eyes that were glassy and scared as hell, but refused to look away with sheer determination. Even after 10 years, she has been able to say no to the Izu eyes. She gave a heavy sigh before staring back down at All Might. All right, but on one condition. Name it. Both Izuku and All Might jumped at the opportunity. I get to analyze your quirk, All Might. I'm not sure, All Might said, still a little shaken from the professor's speech. If I were to help you, I would have to know about the quirk anyway once Izuku gained the quirk. Just let me study you as well. It will even help me have more well-rounded and believable data. All right, agreed. They settled it with a shake. I'd also like some input on a training program for Izuku before he gains my quirk. I'd be glad to. I got his physical and quirk intensity levels and charts right here. The two started to chat about their plans and Izuku couldn't be happier to see them come to an agreement. This marked the beginning of his new life, if only he could have enjoyed it longer before passing out from such a long day. Izuku POV. It's been a week since I convinced Drive Cath to help me and All Might. She had done full checkups and weekly reports on our nutrition intake to see what I needed to do to wield One for All. So far, I've only been doing regular workouts in either her lab or at home, like chin-ups, push-ups, mile-long jogs on treadmill, sit-ups, etc. That is until today when Dr. Cath wanted to bring me to the beach. Yeah, Mom, we got off the train a little while ago. I told my mom on the phone. I would have called earlier, but the station was too noisy to hear anything. No, it's fine. Yeah, I'm with Aki Oda *1. She wanted to do some more tests. Both of us already told you. My quirk levels rose a little, and she wanted to do some outdoor exercises. Don't worry, we're almost there, so I'll talk to you later. Love you too, bye. I turned to Dr. Cath as she puts an arm on my shoulder. You know that she just looking out for you, she said as she gave me a soft smile. I know, I said, gripping my phone a little tighter. Plus it's been a while since you referred to me as Aki Oda, she said, poking my cheek teasingly. Well, I said with an embarrassed blush. So, why are we all the way out here? You never really elaborated other than the next step of my training. You'll see, she said as we continued to walk. Instead of going to the shore when we arrived to the beach, Drive Cath continued walking along the sidewalk until we approached a section that I've never been in before. As we got closer, I could sense trash piled a mile high, from 2-liter bottles to whole freaking fridges. Oh good, I'm not too late. We turned to the street to see All Might in his deflated form had pulled up with an old hook lift truck. It's nice to see you again, All Might, I said, shaking his hand. Dr. Cath told me that you both want to tell me something. Something like that. So far, you have done basic workouts and reporting your diet. For the next phase of your training, we'll be putting all of this into action. Your diet, for instance, is something that the professor focusing on. he said, pointing to her. I turned to Dr. Kath. To help adjust your development for this phase, I devised a meal plan to help you adjust to the eventual strain your body will experience. The Project Plan. All Might had something similar, but his aim to pass American Dream plan was too simplistic for my taste and wasn't adjusted for your body type or your current diet, she said, giving All Might a quick sideways glance. All Might paused a little at the last comment. What can I say? I didn't train in nutrition, like you, Doc. Don't call me that, she almost snapped at him. Right. I stood between the two with slight confusion for a second before I recalled what Drive Kath previously said. Wait, strain, what kind of training am I doing? Now that I can explain, follow me. We went down the steps leading to the beach. All Might cleared a path until we were on the beach, I think. Young Midoriya, what makes you want to become a hero? Well, I want to save people in need with a righteous smile, I said, clutching my fists and looked at them determined look. A righteous smile for a righteous cause. It's one of the many facets that comes with being a hero. Another facet is clearing a path, so that the next generation can have a brighter future. And what better way to do that than community service? Think of all this beach as the world, it's filled with unnecessary and misplaced garbage. Am I right, Midoriya? I took a minute to sense what was around me and I noticed something. Not exactly. Oh, how is that? It looks more like clutter than garbage, I said, putting a hand on my chin. There's a few appliances that aren't completely trashed. We could probably bring those to repair shops or something. Anything too far gone can be scraped for parts. But not all of them look that bad, and probably just need a couple of parts to be up and running again. Then we can donate them to thrift stores or even to the different shelters throughout the city. There's a lot of plastics and other recyclables in this stuff that we can bring to Ao. I rubbed my head where Drive Kath flicked me. You were doing it again, Izu, she said with an amused grin. Sorry, I said, scratching the back of my head. All Might coughed to get our attention. Anyway, you were right. Some of these things could be reused and recycled. Your main goal for this phase is to clear all this from the beach. Wow, wait. What? And as your secondary goal, you are to sort it into the designated bins for the garbage, recycling, and a bed for the UA repair shop. Well, at least that explains the truck, I said with a sweat drop. This is a lot going on at once. Ha, ha, ha. All Might gave a hearty laugh as he patted my back. There's no time like the present, lad. Oh, and one more thing. Ow. I was so busy listening to All Might that I didn't sense Drive Kath moving toward the truck, pulling strange contraption from it, and launched a tennis ball from it. The professor volunteered to help in heightening you sensing range and reflexes. She even repurposed an old t-shirt launcher into a tennis ball launcher. And this leads me to your third goal, to dodge the tennis balls to keep them from hitting you. Think you can handle all of that, young Midoriya? Yes. Let's do this. And so began the 10 months of pure hell. The training done in the lab before was nothing compared to what I endured on that beach. Hurling bags of grimy garbage into the bin, almost juggling dozens of bottles and cardboard scraps into the recycling, and pushing and lifting pounds of appliances ranging from decently sized microwaves to refrigerators and washer-dryer combos that was almost as heavy as All Might. And to round it off, the meal plan that I showed to my mom and meditation before and after I went to sleep to help relax and widening the range of my sonic radar. I got a few strange looks from my classmates when I came in using weighted hand grips, practically squatting at my desk instead of resting in my chair, and mediating in the courtyard during my lunch break. As time passed, I started to see that it was coming together. Around halfway through my hauling, I came accustomed to Dr. Kath's tennis ball sneak attacks. I would sense my surroundings were few minutes, and would find her figure and prepare to dodge when I feel that she's locked and loaded. But that day, I decided to do things a little bit differently. As I was lifting a couple of microwave, I sensed that I was in her sights and prepared myself. When she fired, not only did I dodge it but I hit it back with my unused hand. I couldn't aim it at her like I hoped, but it was enough to make her pause. "All right, that's my little Izuku-kun," she yelled excitedly before she gave a devilish smirk. "But can you handle rapid fire?" She then launched a barrage of tennis balls at me and I was able to block most of them after ditching the microwaves, until I was hit from the side and knocked off my feet. I shook my head before I scoped the area to find that All Might, back from emptying the recycle bin, had thrown a stray ball that rolled in his direction. Always be aware of your surroundings. But still, that was a nice display, lad. He gave a laugh that we couldn't help but join. Before we knew it was past a week before the entrance exam. Third person. "Can't believe that you wanted me to drive you these last couple of times," All Might said to Professor Cathode as they rode to the beach in the truck. "What makes you say that?" she said with a raised brow. "I'd thought that you would hate my guts after asking you to do all of this stuff." "Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm still a little peeved about it," she said pointedly. "And my fan view of you has popped like a bubble. But, deep down, I'm mostly doing this for Izuku," she said with a grin as she looked out the window. All Might couldn't help but grin also when he glanced over, that is until she continued speaking. "Plus, I'm tired of getting strange looks from people when I'm on the metro or on my bike," she said, avoiding eye contact. Both of them couldn't help but chuckle. It was a few minutes before we got to the beach, but they barely recognized the place when they got there. "Are we in the right spot?" "Yeah." They got out of the truck to see piles of the remaining trash sorted and lined up in front of the already filled bins. And right on top the repair bed stood Izuku. Facing them, shirtless, lined with sweat and sand, and exhaustively huffing before letting out a roaring scream from the pit of his gut. "Yada you! *2. Oh my! Oh my! Oh my! Super crap!" exclaimed All Might. "Damn!" Professor Cathode stated with bulging eyes. Before either of them could say anything, Izuku collapsed on the fridge that he was standing on. All Might and Professor Cathode ran to check on him, only to find him fast asleep. "Wow, the kid finished with 4 days to spare," All Might said while looking back and forth between Izuku and the piles that he finished. "It's not over yet. After you guys finished hauling this, I'll give Izuku a quick check-up and he should be good to go." "Yeah, but he'll have to wake up before then," I said with a chuckle while he bent down to pat Izuku on the head. "Nice job.